interested in, and just was having lots of fun really on those things that I was interested in, being a country boy. Now, in the early teenage years, I had a very heavy loss. I lost somebody who was very, very close to me. And that really knocked me. That really knocked me more than I understood at the time. It affected my motivation, my drive. It affected my ability to concentrate on my studies. It affected my ability to get on with people. I became very much more introverted, kind of looking inwards, as opposed to what you're supposed to be doing is living. So when I had this loss, it really did have a massive impact on me personally and affected me in all sorts of different areas. So I'm not just giving this webinar, as a kind of teacher who's never experienced this. I've experienced it, as everybody has, and I've experienced it to a large degree. Okay, and so when I had this loss, it had massive effects, not just on me, but on the people around me as well, who kind of were concerned, as you would when you see somebody who's not doing well. So before I begin into the meat and bones of this, I want to ask you a question. And for anybody on the different channels like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, you can put your comments into the comments box and it will come around to me. For anybody on Zoom, what I'd like you to do is just put your comments directly into the chat box. Here's the question. I want to find out what it is that you want to improve and why you came to this webinar tonight. Okay, so I'd like you to just think for a moment. You're in this webinar called Recovering from Grief and Loss. Okay, what I'd like to find out from you is, if you don't mind sharing it, pop into the comments or the chat box what it is that you want to handle. Like, obviously you came to this webinar because somebody maybe mentioned it to you, or you saw an ad or something like that. But what was it that, like, why are you here? Basically, why did you come? What did you want to learn about? And that's what I'm interested in. For a second reason as well. First of all, just because I'm interested. And second of all, because I want to also make sure that the webinar is tailored for you as well, and we don't kind of go off track. So have a think about that. Why did you click into this link on the webinar? What is it that you want to deal with? Did you lose somebody close to you? Did you lose a business? Have you had a traumatic experience? Do you find it hard to kind of get yourself going, get yourself motivated? What is the main reason why you're here, and what is the thing that you want to handle and address in your life? Okay, so if you don't mind, think about that. If you don't mind sharing it, pop it into the comments. I'd be really interested to see it, and then I'll check it periodically as we're going along. Okay, so now let's launch straight into this subject of recovering from grief and loss. For me personally, I had been carrying around a lot of grief and loss, some of which I was aware of, most of which I wasn't really fully aware of it, until I got into this subject, which I showed you about earlier, Dianetics. And what this subject does, as I'll tell you later, is it peels off the layers. It helps you to peel off the layers so that you can find the losses that you've had and deal with them correctly. All right? Because often when you've lost somebody or you've had a traumatic experience, you will be aware of that one traumatic experience. But the fact is, and this is what was amazing to me, is that there's a lot more hidden, stored underneath the surface, which can affect you massively. Okay, so let's launch into this. The first thing I want to go over when we talk about recovering from grief or loss, it means that the very first thing has to be present. You must have had a moment of grief or loss. So you may have, I don't know, lost a parent, okay? This is loss number 1. You may have lost a friend or you know, a partner, okay? So for you to have, in order to recover from grief or loss, it must have happened that something occurred in your life. And these losses are still affecting you directly or indirectly. So let me just break this down a little bit. Every day you are experiencing life. You're learning things as you're going along in life so that you can survive better. Okay, so when you learn how to drive a car, because it will help you in life, you store that information so that you don't forget it, so that you can drive in the future. Same with riding a bike. You learn to ride a bike because it helps you get from A to B. And so you store that information so that in the future, when you have an opportunity to ride a bike, you don't have to try and remember it all. It's all there very, very quickly. So everything that you have experienced in your past is stored in this thing called the mind. Now, don't worry about all these other theories of the mind. I've read a couple of different books on different subjects. I have found some subjects very confusing. Not this one. Other subjects very confusing, but particularly the subject which tells you that all of your thoughts are contained in a lump of meat in the brain, and all of your behavior patterns and your personality is due to a chemical imbalance in the different sides of your brain, upper, lower, left, and right. And the reason it really annoys me, is because when people go along with that theory, their next recommendation for you is that you should take some pills to handle it. You should take some drugs or some substances in order to cure you of your mental and chemical imbalance. In my opinion, that is the biggest load of baloney I have ever heard. And honestly, this isn't just today. Even before I got involved with Dianetics, I knew there was something wrong with this whole theory of it's all in your brain. And, it is true that if you cut out half of a person's brain, it is going to affect the nervous system in the body. It's going to affect the whole body coordination. But in my view, it's completely impossible that all your memories from your past could be stored in a lump of meat that you can hold in your hand. I just don't believe that. Where are these pictures stored? Lord knows. That's not important right now. What's more important is how this mind functions, and that is demonstrable. In other words, you can demonstrate it. Now, there are two parts of your mind. The first part is called the analytical mind. And this is the part of your mind that you use every single day. So you decide, okay, it's raining outside. You look outside, there's a piece of information. Okay, I think I'll wear my jacket, bring my umbrella, and whatever. So you make decisions from your analytical mind every day. Where should I go to shop? What college should I go to? Who should I trust? Where should I invest my money? What is the best quality food at the best price? Where's those shopping centers? What's the best road to go on? You make decisions every single second, minute of the day about what you're going to do next. Well, maybe if you're watching a movie, maybe it kind of goes on pause. But in general, you are storing information all the time. Okay? Yes, okay. And they got a direct message there to me. I normally don't read out direct messages, but I got your message, and we will address this. Okay. Now, so you have two parts of your mind. The analytical mind is the part of your mind that you use every day for normal everyday stuff and for all the good stuff. The bad stuff that happens to you is stored in a separate part of the mind called the reactive mind. Okay. So you have an analytical mind, and this is all explained in the book, by the way, and I'll cover that a bit later. And you have a reactive mind. Now, the word reactive means basically push button. In other words, it is not the type of mind that thinks clearly. It's just a trigger part of your mind that you are not in control of. You are in control of this, but you're not in control of the reactive mind. It just reacts and can affect your thinking and your behavior without your consent. Okay. How does this work? On an everyday basis, you're living your life. If you get news of a loss, if you lose somebody close to you, or if you have some traumatic experience, what happens to a greater or lesser degree is that this part of your mind shuts down and you become semi-conscious. Not fully unconscious, but semi-conscious. In other words, you're not quite there, you're not quite with it. When that's happening, the information and the experience is stored in this separate compartment called the reactive mind. And how this works is this. The more bad experiences that you have stored in your reactive mind, in other words, the more bad experiences that you've had, for example, if you've lost a friend, or if you had a really bad accident, or if you got dismissed from your job, or if you lost your company, these things are all stored here, packaged in a not very well, not neatly organized package of pain. Okay, so they're stored in here. Now, if you lose somebody close to you, all it takes is something in your environment that's similar in some way to the loss in order to trigger it off. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's say you lost your dad. Okay, let's say you lost your dad 2 years ago. I lost my dad a few years ago. It was very, very upset, very traumatic for me. So I'm giving a relatively live example. You lose your dad, okay? Now, that might have happened 2 years ago, could have happened last year, could have happened 3 years ago, whatever. And you think, you know what? And the popular expression that goes along is that time is a great healer. Okay? People think, you know what? Time will heal it. But my experience is that time doesn't really heal it. It might make you forget to a certain degree, but it's not really a healer as such. It just kind of pushes it into the background. So here's how it works. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. And okay, got that comment. So if you lost your dad 2 years ago, all it would take is for you to be tired one day and see a picture of your dad in the sitting room. And what happens is, there's enough similarity here, even just by seeing him and the tiredness and maybe the same room that you used to share, the sitting room in your house. There's enough here to trigger off this loss, and then this loss is going to affect you without your consent. In other words, what happens is you can't stop thinking about it. You don't particularly want to be thinking about it for the rest of the day, but it's really hard to shake it. So you can't stop thinking about it. And that's the reactive mind in action. And because you can't stop thinking about it, the emotions then kick in. And there's a replay of the emotions that happened here again. In other words, what your reactive mind is telling you, just by seeing the similar situation, is that, okay, we have a similar situation here, we're going to replay what happened before. And this is why you get a reactivation, or in Dianetics we call it a restimulation of the past bad experience. Okay? And I didn't even say hello to the other people who joined us. Hello Fernanda, hello Cloda, and hello Mbule. I have asked originally if you want to pop in where you're logging in from. I'd be great. I'd be interested to find out where you are. Okay. I like to see that. Okay. So you've lost somebody close to you, and because this reactive mind is not under your control, it operates on a trigger basis. Every time you see the picture of your dad, it triggers it off, and it comes back into play. Okay? Again. Now this could also happen without you even realizing it. So for example, let's say your dad's birthday was on the 12th of December. Okay? And now you're in the sitting room, you didn't quite look at the picture today, but it's the 12th of December. And you have a little notification in your phone that it's your dad's birthday. And you don't really think about it, but you just continue on. But again, there's enough similarity in just the anniversary, his birthday, to trigger it off again, and then you don't feel good, but you don't quite know why. So what I'm saying is that when you experience losses, external things can trigger you off knowingly or unknowingly, and can affect your mood and can affect the way you approach life, your whole thinking, and your ability to kind of motivate yourself to get on in life. Okay, so now I've just found out that the messages, when you send a message, it comes through to me as a direct message, which is fine, even if you intend it for everybody, but I'll see all your comments here and I'll read them out, okay? Now, so summary. When you lose somebody close to you, that bad experience or that hurtful experience gets stored in a part of your mind called the reactive mind. And this part of your mind is push button and is not under your control. In other words, all it takes is a similar thing to happen in present time or a similar set of circumstances to trigger it off without your consent. It could be something somebody says to you. It could be an anniversary. It could be going to the same place that you visited with that person for a long time. Fernanda, great. You're from Cork. Absolutely fantastic. And Mule, you're from Dundalk. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Now, so again, it's a push button. It's a trigger part of the mind. So here is your next exercise for the evening. What I'd like you to do is think about this for the moment. What I'd like you to do is put down into the chat or into the comments on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, put into the comments one thing that you're aware of that triggers you off. And I'm particularly talking about a loss. So put down into the chat one thing in your life that triggers you off or that makes you sad. You see, maybe it's a picture of your dad or your partner or friend or family member, somebody that you lost. Maybe it's just something that you see on television. Maybe it's a certain time of the year. If you don't mind, pop into the chat one thing that triggers you off and that makes you upset without your consent, without your permission. Okay? I'm just interested to see that, okay? So just take a moment to think of that and pop it in if you don't mind. While you're thinking of that, for me personally, because I lost my dad many years ago, 2011, I think. And it took me quite a long time to get over it because he was very, very close to me. But one of the things that this book goes over and something that I addressed as part of this was this trigger thing. I did some of the self-improvement techniques that I'm going to tell you about tonight, and I discovered something very interesting which I was not aware of before. My dad was a builder, okay? He used to build houses and very good at his job. And I was often with him on a building site, you know, visiting and trying to help him out in different ways. And the thing that I realized that was a trigger for me, and this is going to sound absolutely crazy, and the thing was keeping me so much in a bad mood, you're not going to believe this. The thing that was affecting me, that was triggering me off, without me even realizing it, was simply walls. Now that sounds absolutely crazy. You might think, okay, Vincent, you're a complete lunatic. You know, you're paranoid about walls. I wasn't about walls. I wasn't even aware of it. But what was happening with me was that every time I went into a building, especially one that had just bare concrete walls or a kind of a concrete look, bare luck, it, without me even realizing it, triggered off something, and it made me feel bad. And I just felt bad, but I didn't know why. Now, when I did some of this, which I'm going to tell you about later, I spotted that and went, oh my God, that's every time, I can't believe it, boom, completely cleared it up. Because I was able to spot, this is the thing that's triggered me off. The problem is, a lot of these triggers are buried. You don't even know about them. You're not aware of them. The ones that you are aware of, in actual fact, probably trigger you less than the ones that you are not aware of. So the whole idea with Dianetics is to help you to clear up this stuff here. And in doing that, you're going to be understanding what are the triggers. And when you spot them and when you clear them, things tend to clear up and you start to feel better about yourself. Okay. Okay, we had one example coming in. If anybody else wants to add an example, please feel free to do so. This one was when I listened to some specific songs like jazz. Very good. It's a really good example. So you've had a loss and you listen to a certain type of music and it brings it back again. It kind of brings back the thoughts, brings back the emotions. It'd be nice to just enjoy the music. And I'm not trying to say here, by the way, that you should completely forget about the person that you've lost. You still have a lot of love for this person, and I'll show you in a minute why I'm saying that. But you should be able to get on with it. It's the same with people who have lost girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, and wives. When they hear the song, the love song, because almost every couple has a love song that they have kind of connected with them. When they hear that love song in the future, it reminds them of that loss that they have of the partner if that happened. So thanks very much, Fernanda, for that really great example. Okay, I'm going to go over with you in a few minutes something that you can do to help you with this on a temporary basis. And then I'm going to go over something that will help you on a permanent basis. Okay, but this is the very first thing that keeps losses alive and keeps it there day in, is all the triggers that are happening in your environment which are reminding you continuously of the loss. Okay, so that's the first thing, triggers. Next thing is chains. Chains, he said? What do you mean chains, Vincent? You go out and buy myself a bicycle chain? No. Chains. Okay. So let's say there's you and you've had this loss, okay? There's your mind and so forth. And you lost somebody close to you, I don't know, a year ago, okay? You lost somebody close to you. And no matter how much tears you've shed and how much you've cried about it, you've talked about it, you've done as much as you can to handle it, it's still not gone away. Now, the reason it's not gone away is because when a person is addressing a loss, it has to be done in a very exact way for it to completely clear up. Completely. And that exact way is explained in the Dianetics book. Of course, talking to people helps, and that's part of it. Communication is part of the technique here, okay? So, why is it that you can't recover from this loss? You've spoken about it. You thought you were over it, but now it's back again. Okay? You know, it took 6 months for you to get back on your feet, and now a year later, you're back down in the dumps again. Why is that happening? Because you've gone over it so many times. The reason is what I said at the beginning, chains, okay? When I say chains, I mean this. If you lost somebody 1 year ago, that is the one major loss that you will have most of your attention on and that you will feel that you're suffering from the most. And it is true. Maybe it is the main one. However, usually there are also earlier similar losses. Okay? Earlier similar losses. Okay? I'm going to stick a little one here, okay? Now, these losses get connected. So the pain that you've experienced here, it definitely can be addressed just as a single incident using the techniques of Dianetics, and you can completely clear it up. But if it's a case where it doesn't, it means there is an earlier one that is affecting you in addition to the one that you're aware of is affecting you. So for example, if you lost your dad a year ago, okay, and it's been a huge loss, okay, when you apply the correct techniques, that should handle it. But if it doesn't, it means there's an earlier one that is still pushing some pain into this more recent one. And if that one doesn't handle, there's an earlier one still. Okay? So you might say, okay, well, I lost my dad a year ago, but 5 years ago, I actually lost my mum. And so they're connected. So yes, you're in a very bad way about the loss of your dad, but also, believe it or not, unless you've handled it, the loss of your mum is also still affecting you, and it's actually connected in with that incident. And then maybe earlier on, so this was 5 years ago, and this was 10 years ago, you had a baby, and the baby died, okay? And this loss was traumatic at the time. So that one is feeding, this one is feeding this one. So you're not just handling, in many cases, one loss. It's true that one loss could be the biggest one. And once that's fully properly handled, you can feel a lot better about yourself and you can move on in life. But in many cases, I've found is that there are earlier similar losses which have to be addressed, and they're often hidden. For me personally, when I started with this subject and I started addressing losses in Dianetics, I first of all addressed the loss that I was aware of. I thought, okay, this is a big one and so forth. And fine, I had a bit of benefit from that, and that's fine. But interestingly enough, when I addressed that one, I suddenly saw these ones. And when I addressed these ones, they absolutely exploded. And I mean, I'm talking about maybe 2 full boxes of tissues worth of explosion. Tears everywhere. And these were the ones holding the chain in place. And these are the ones I had to address. Now, I couldn't find it until I had addressed that one. And when I addressed that one, these ones came to view, but these were the heavy ones. And it's often the buried ones that are the heavy ones. And that's why it's so vital to actually handle these things. So often when you're trying to recover from grief or a loss, it doesn't go away because there are earlier ones connected to it, but it also doesn't go away because it hasn't been addressed properly. Honestly, talking about your loss with a friend or a family member definitely helps, but it doesn't fully clear it up 100%. And what I'm going to go over with you tonight is what does clear it up 100%. And again, when I say clear it up, I don't mean, well, you just now forget about that person and you move on with your life. You will still have as much love for that person as you've had, and probably even more, but you are recovered and you can live again. Life is to be lived. It's not, whoever you lost never intended you to be sad for the rest of your life, never intended you to be stuck in that moment. Okay, so that's the second thing. Now I'm going to go into a couple of basics on how to handle the triggers and then how to handle these things here. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, and can I just ask you, and hello, somebody came in there, and Niza, thank you very much for joining us on the webinar. Okay. Can I ask you with a show of hands or thumbs or a smiley face, if you're tracking with what I'm saying? Could you let me know if you're tracking, if you understand this, what I've gone over with you so far? I'm not asking you whether you agree with it, just whether you understand it. Okay, Claudette? Thank you. Anybody else understand it? And sometimes people don't know how to put the chat in the smiley face. Okay, Fernanda, thank you. If you don't understand something that I'm going over tonight, Stay until the end, because when I finish, I will go over and answer any questions that you have. Okay? So if you miss something or you don't get it, let me know. Okay? And okay, VJ, gotcha, and Anissa as well. Thank you so much. Okay, very good. Okay, so we've gone over two things so far. Triggers, things in your environment that trigger you off. Okay? And also, we're talking about chains of incidents from your past, not just the one thing. Okay, so now, the next thing we're going to do is have a look at how do you handle the triggers. Okay, now, it's impossible to completely get rid of all triggers in your life because simply you don't really want to. You could get rid of every photo of the person that you've lost from your house, but you don't want to, and it can be hard to do that. It's very difficult for people just say it to me a lot, say, listen, you just have to cut this person out, cut that person out, cut Joe out, cut Billy out, cut everybody out who stresses you out. What's going to happen is, when you go into a new environment, you're still going to have new people like that or new situations that will trigger you off in a different way. Okay, so let's have a look at this, right? So there's you, and there's this package of reactive mind which keeps getting triggered, okay? By this, whatever, okay? These are the triggers. So what do you do about this? Now, the next recommendation I'm going to make is how to completely clear it, which is ultimately what you have to do. Because if you don't completely clear up this stuff, it's going to keep coming back in. So what I'm going to give you right now, I'm going to show you this at the end. It's called a booklet called Solutions for a Dangerous Environment. The reason it's called Solutions for a Dangerous Environment is that there's a technique in it whereby it recommends that you try not watching the news for a couple of weeks and see how you feel, because often the news stresses people out, and it's just it kind of creates a dangerous environment for people. But anyway, this booklet contains, and I'll tell you more about this at the end, it contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 separate techniques that you can apply in order to help you to get on top of this situation on an immediate basis by yourself. Okay? It's not going to handle the root. It's not going to handle the source of the problem, which is all this stored pain, but it's going to get you over the hump. In other words, get you at least able to get on with life. I'm only going to read to you one simple little section here, okay? And I'm going to read to you the simplest and easiest one to do. This is probably going to sound ridiculously simple, obvious, but it is absolutely workable. And this is the recommendation. Take a walk. Now, okay, you might say, Vincent, come on. Was that what the webinar was all about? Sure, I could have done that myself. I knew that myself anyway. I take walks every day. Okay, it is true that people know that this works, because when you take a walk, you often feel better. We're going to add to this. When you take your walk, don't go out with your headphones. Don't just go out on your own. Go out on your own. Even if it's raining, bring an umbrella. Don't bring the dog. Go out yourself for a walk. And when you're going out for a walk, take your time and just look at things. Okay? Look at things. Take a walk daily if you have to, or every couple of days. Just take a walk by yourself, no headphones, nobody else, just you, and look at things. The reason that's going to help is this. These external things have the ability to trigger you off because some of your attention is still stuck there a little bit. So these external things, it's much easier for them to trigger you off. But when you take a walk, what happens is when you're looking outward at things, okay, you're looking outward at things, your attention goes out onto external things and away from this. So in other words, what you're doing effectively is you're taking away that connection between the past and the present, so that your attention is external and not internal. So try that out. That's the very first recommendation. The very first simple thing that you can do is take a walk and look at things. Look at the building, look at the tree, look at the car, look at the footpath, look at things. All right? And just take your time and do it until I feel a bit better now. I feel a bit better. I'm going to go home. And do the same thing the next day or the day after. You can do it every day if you want. But it's very, very beneficial, and it will definitely help you a lot in your life. So just take a walk and look at things. So if you've had a recent loss, for example, it is very beneficial to do this, because it somehow gets your attention out there instead of inside, which is not where you want it all the time. That's the first thing. And this is the thing really that we're going to use to try and handle and address the triggers and the things that are affecting you on an immediate basis, on a day-to-day basis. Okay? So that's the first thing, the external thing. Now, that's going to work for you, for sure. But it's something that you would have to do consistently. And it's helpful, but it's not, as I said, it's not handling the root of the issue. It's not going to handle the root. So how do we handle the root of the issue? Now, that's what we're going to go on to next. Okay. People say to me, okay, Vincent, you know what? Okay. All right, let's just add in these losses. Okay, they're affecting them every day or every 2 days. And like we've all known friends and family who've experienced a loss, and it takes a long time for some people to recover from it. Quicker for others, but a long time for certain people. What should happen is that you lose somebody close to you and you grieve for as long as it takes. And grieving, in my opinion, is a very natural process. It's not irrational. Some people think, oh, you're grieving, there must be something wrong with you. No, it's natural. Grieve for as long as it takes. Use up a bucket of tissues. Who cares? Grieve, and it takes different lengths of time for different people. It really does. So it's a natural thing. But if a person is still grieving a year later, or 2 years later, or 5 years later, and still hasn't come to terms with it, it's time to give that person a bit of assistance and a bit of help. All right? So here we have these bad experiences that you've had. And then people say to me, this beautifully wonderful, I'm going to put it in quotation, I'm being sarcastic, wonderful expression, which is this: time, Vincent, is a great healer. All you have to do is wait. All you have to do is wait. A year, it'll all go away, it'll be fine. 2 years, 3 years, don't worry, it'll all be fine. Okay? Well, unfortunately, even though, yes, time does help to push it more into the past and you're not affected by it as much, unfortunately, this is not a correct statement. The time does not actually heal these things. It might make it go away for a while, but the next time something goes wrong, these incidents are going to get triggered again. So time is not the great healer, as people have assumed it to be. Okay? And I'm not saying that you're not going to feel better after some time. Usually people do, and they recover from it. But it doesn't mean that the incident is handled. Even if it's not affecting you, all it takes is something else to go wrong for this past loss to get triggered off. Okay. So what do you do about it then? As I mentioned, you can't really get rid of all the potential triggers in your life. You can't really wipe them out. It's just not possible, because more new ones will keep cropping up. Okay? And yes, taking a walk is going to help to get your attention outwards as opposed to inwards. But is there a way to handle this so that it's completely handled? Now, in the past, we've all done the following, okay? We found a friend, okay? And we've communicated to the friend and we have felt better. And you know the interesting thing that why friendships are so important and why it's good to have a good understanding not necessarily sympathetic, but empathetic friend, is that they can listen to you and you can talk to them and you'll feel better just by having somebody listen. So we're exploring now where this technique is going. By talking to a friend or a family member, you can get it off your chest. You can start to feel better. And it's the same in religion. Many people have used the local minister or the local priest as a source and somebody to talk to. And so they go and talk to the minister or talk to the priest because it helps. The minister listens and the person feels better. Good. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that helps to a good degree, but it doesn't completely handle it. Because all it takes is for, again, as I mentioned, something similar to happen again to trigger it off. What you want to do is this. You want to get that pain from that incident and completely clear it up so that it is now stored as a normal memory in your analytical mind. And the pain is gone. In other words, what you want to do is get rid of the pain. Pain out. Now, that does not mean that you're going to lose any love for the person that you lost. You will continue to love them, and as I mentioned, you're probably going to love them even more. And it's not that you want to forget the person. You don't. We don't want to forget these people. They were and are important to us. Now, the gentleman who put this manual together, L. Ron Hubbard, and when you read this, and I'm going to recommend you get a copy of this book, by the way, the technique is incredible. What he developed is an exact series of things that you do. 10 steps. 1 to 10. 10 steps that you do as part of communication, using this natural flow of communication with a friend or family member, but using it in a very exact way so that the person is not just talking about the incident, but while wide awake with their eyes closed, can actually go back and re-experience the incident to a greater or lesser degree. Now, you might say, Vincent, we don't want to go back to the past. Okay, true. But in order to go into the future, there's going to have to be some dealing with the past. And dealing with the past is not just taking the surface off of it, it's going and fully confronting it. So, what he developed is a technique that you use with a friend or with a family member or with somebody who's trained in it. A technique which is called auditing. And the word auditing means to listen and to guide. That's the name of the technique. It's explained in this book, in book 3, chapter 5. What we call the auditor, who is the person delivering the help. Let's say you were helping a friend get over a loss, then you would be the auditor, the person who listens and guides, and you use this 10-step procedure. So you're helping them to re-experience the incident, and you are going over that incident enough times, using this exact series of steps until that incident and the pain is completely cleared out. And the difference that you're going to see in that individual or in yourself is going to be nothing short of dramatic if that incident is fully handled. Now, as I mentioned, if it doesn't happen and you've used all this and you've done as much as you can on that incident, it always means there's an earlier incident connected to it which is hidden and which will become uncovered once that incident is handled. So what I'm saying to you is this. There is a way to completely clear up the losses that you've had in your past. Losses and upsets are the main thing responsible for a person's lack of vitality, lack of happiness, lack of hope, and lack of dreams. Losses. And the good news is that it can be handled and it can be addressed naturally, using the basic techniques that we've had for thousands and thousands of years, which is communication. And what this genius of an author has done is put this thing together in such a way that while wide awake, the person can use this technique on those incidents and completely address it. How do you know it's addressed at the end? Because the person will feel it and will be able to know, you know what, that's addressed. That is something that I've actually handled and I can move on. I feel like I can move on with my life now. When I addressed my losses with this particular subject, the amount of difference it made to my energy level, to my drive, to my enthusiasm was night and day. It's like carrying around an invisible, heavy bag with you. You've gone so used to it that you don't even know it's there. But when you get in here and you clear it up, the lightness that you feel will tell you that you were carrying around something. And so it's very difficult for me to tell you, oh, this is great, you should do it immediately, just on what I've said. What you have to do is experience it for yourself. Okay? So, summary. And then I want to tell you what I would recommend as your next step, which is the very first thing you should do, which is education. We talked about losses and how if you're recovering from a grief moment or a loss, it means that there's something that happened to you which you haven't moved on from and which keeps getting triggered. And it gets triggered by things in your environment because this part of your mind it's stored in is what we call a reactive part of your mind, and it's not under your control. It's push button. Okay. We also discovered that incidents are connected by chains of incidents. Sometimes, if you haven't handled a loss using Dynetics, there's an earlier similar loss, or there's an earlier one, or there's an earlier one, and you will eventually get to the basic, which clears up the whole thing. It could happen that you only have to address this one, and you make a big difference. But I found in many cases there are earlier similar losses connected to it. Okay, so now I want to tell you what I have prepared for you, and then I'm going to open up the floor for anybody who wants to hang on for questions and answers. Okay, so I'm going to show you these slides, and this is what I would recommend for you first. So here's the first one. I'm going to recommend that you get yourself a copy of this book. As I said, the very first step is education. Know before you go. Anybody who has read this book and who has come in for auditing here or who has tried it out themselves or who's experienced it, it's gone much better because they understand what's going on. They understand about how the technique works and why it works. So let's go over some points. Okay, let me just put this on big view so I can actually read it as well. The real source of unwanted behavior, thought, and emotion. So in this particular section, it goes into what is the reactive mind, because that is really the root of why it is that you get stressed so often, why it is that you become unhappy for no reason at all. Okay, that's the first one. The full discovery of the parts of the mind and how they work. So it goes over the two major parts of the mind, as I explained. You have an analytical mind, which you use every day of the week, and you have a reactive mind, which is basically a storage of all those painful moments which need to get cleared up. Exact step-by-step therapy to fully use your mind to unlock your full potential. So in this book, there are 3 books. In book 3, chapter 5, you will find the exact series of steps that you apply in order to clear up these past losses so that you can move on, as I did. And it is very, very beneficial to do so. Okay? It's been translated into 50 languages, and which is quite amazing, actually. And it's sent out with free shipping. Now, I've got an extra book that I want to give you as part of this, and that is the Solutions for a Dangerous Environment, which I referred to earlier, which will give you techniques that you can use on yourself and that you can help to apply with others. There's 8 of them in total in the book. It's a little booklet. It's very easy. There's pictures and everything. It's quite easy to understand. The English is extremely easy. Very good. It's a booklet, but it's very, very valuable information to have, and you can use this not only for yourself but also for other people. In terms of cost, the cost of the two books together is €25. The Dianetics book itself is 500 pages. It's a good big manual. It's paperback, and there's a beautiful glossary at the end for any words that you might not fully understand. And the booklet itself is €5. It's a small booklet, but it contains really incredible data. Now, if you get these books before the webinar ends tonight, and we'll probably wrap up in about 10 minutes, it's going to be at a special price, and that price is going to be €20. Okay, so if you get it tonight, before the webinar ends, it will be €20. It's just really to kind of encourage you to do it, because quite often what happens with people is they say to me, "Oh, Vincent, I'll do it tomorrow, or it'll be all right, and I'll leave it till the next time and whatever." The problem is that the longer you leave this reactive mind undealt with, it tends to grow, because every time you get stressed out, it kind of builds and builds. Okay, so those are the two books. I would strongly recommend that you get them. There's a link going up in the actual chat right now, and that will be you can get it there before we wrap up tonight, and we will answer any questions that you have. Okay. Fernanda, may I only have the small book, please? Yeah, send a message to Sylvia, and she will answer that exact question for you, Fernanda. Okay. Yeah, so that booklet is vital, and I'm guessing you might have the Dianetics book, maybe you don't. But I would honestly, this thing contains beautiful, simple techniques that you can use on an immediate basis. And yeah, okay, that's perfect. So it's really, really valuable. And then this book here is really about getting to the root of the problem. And honestly, if you learn these techniques, you are in a much, much better position to help yourself and to help other people to recover from grief and loss. I can tell you right now, you can walk into any house in Ireland or over in Canada or wherever you are. I didn't ask everybody, or down in Cork, and where's everybody else from? Dundalk, and wherever you are. You can walk into any house and you will find people, I say most houses, the vast majority, suffering from losses. Often they are fully aware of it and they haven't been right since then. And in many cases, they're not even aware of it. But once you start applying the techniques, you're going to see a massive, massive difference in that person. When I have been using Dianetics on a one-to-one basis with people, I found some of the biggest gains have been when we've addressed losses. There are other things that you address with Dianetics, but losses is the most major one. Okay, now, great, Fernanda. I'm glad you liked the explanation and found it easy to understand. Great. Okay, folks, so what I want to do right now is for the next 5 or 10 minutes, you can hang on if you like. I don't want you to leave. If you're under time pressure and you feel you have to go, then that's fine. Please do get a copy of the book if you haven't got it already. Get it tonight, give it a shot, and get yourself into auditing. Okay? For anybody else who has any questions, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, you can pop your questions into the comments field and they will come around to me directly on Zoom. And for anybody on Zoom, you can literally just pop your question in here, stay and you get those questions answered here. You might even be interested in other people's questions because, you might not necessarily think of it at this moment in time. So just first of all, review the information I've given you tonight and just have a think and see, is there any question that you have on the technique, on the how to recover from grief or losses, on why they affect you, or on the materials, okay? Or even me and my experiences. Let me know, pop it into the chat. I'd be happy to answer your question. So I'll give you a minute or two to do that, and we'll see how it goes. If you've got a question or two, we'll answer them. And if there's not many questions, we'll wrap up in a few minutes. But we'll give it another 5 or 10 minutes. If you have anything else that you want to ask, you can pop it in to the chat. while you're thinking of your questions, okay, and please feel free to pop them in there, but while you're thinking of them, I'll just give you a little bit of a background to myself and why I feel so strongly about this subject. Where I'm from down the countryside, well, when I was there and growing up and all the rest of it, there wasn't really solutions for people. Not really. If you got stressed out, you were told, listen, just handle it yourself, or just keep working, or go to the doctor and get a pill. Or worse, go to the doctor, not to name professions or whatever, go to the men in the white coats and they'll sort you out. That was almost like the only option for people. And it struck me that, there's nothing really here. The closest thing that I found was there were various churches in my community, and the priests and ministers were very much involved in our community. They were going out and visiting, and they were actually listening to their parishioners and so forth. And that was kind of like, it struck me at the time as very natural, because we had ministers visiting our house and for different things, just doing their rounds, really. But outside of that, there was nothing except go and get drunk, visit the doctor, get a pill, or just say nothing about it and go back to work and don't be bothering me. These kind of things. And, even as a kid, I always got great benefit from seeing people happy and doing well. And when I came across this subject, honestly, as soon as I got it and as soon as I started using it, I went, this is it. I found it. I knew exactly this was the technique. All I was looking for was something that worked. Something that worked and helped people to recover and to be happy again and to do well in life. And the reason I stuck with it is because those people that have applied this and got the procedure, it's consistent. They don't go up and down. They don't have this, they handle the loss, but now the loss is back again. It's not like that. When it is handled with Dianetics, it is handled. It doesn't have to be handled again. Full stop. Okay? But of course, it has to be done properly. And so this is one of the main reasons why I really want people to, first of all, get an education on what this subject is, because it will help you to understand grief, to understand loss for yourself personally, and also to help other people. And if all this did was helped you to become more alive, which is what it does, I think that would be worth it. If all it did was help you to just at least move away from the painful things in the past, so that you are not with your mind always in the past, but in present time, I think that would be well worth it, right? So anyway, get yourselves a copy of the books, take the opportunity, grab the special offer, and it'll be there for you for the next few minutes. And let's see, did I have any? Yeah. I don't have any other questions coming in as such as yet. But anybody have any comments that they want to make? Anything that you learned? I'd be very interested. If you've learned anything, don't be shy. You can just put it in. Vincent, I had no clue what you were saying. Or Vincent, the point that you made about triggers made sense. Or Vincent, how do I get the books? Okay. But anyway, so yeah, and also I just want to let you know, folks, that when you get the book, right, we don't just throw you out there with the book and forget about you. You will have our email address, so if you have any questions about the book, or if you need any help on the book, or if you want to connect up with another auditor, somebody that you can twin with or work with, we can assist you with that. We run seminars on this pretty regularly, education courses, and various different other things like we train people professionally. You can receive this professionally. You can do all these different things, But there is follow-up available to you if you want it, so that you're not just left stranded out there with a book which ends up propping up a bookshelf. We don't want that to happen, Okay, so listen, I want to say, okay, no problem, Anissa. We'll wrap up. I want to say to everybody, thank you all so much for your time tonight. For everybody on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram, thank you so much for being here and for giving me your time. And for everybody who's on who else have we got left on Zoom? Inessa, Cloda, and Mbole. Thank you so much for being there right to the last minute. I appreciate your time. You could have done nothing else this evening, but you gave me your time, and I am very grateful. Okay, folks, so we'll say good night. Hope you enjoyed the webinar, and I hope to meet you again at some point in the future. Okay? Bye for now.